3 times a week without fail, Gerald came into my office having walked 30 minutes each time, sometimes 40. He was proud of it, and he had every right to be. Most men his age weren't doing anything at all, but Gerald was getting worse. His knees were swelling by Thursday. His lower back tightened up so badly by Friday morning that he needed 10 minutes just to stand up straight after getting out of bed. He wasn't looking for excuses to stop walking. He wanted to understand why a healthy habit was destroying him. And when I watched how he walked, I understood immediately. The problem wasn't the walking, the problem was everything about the way he was doing it. I'm Dr. Michael Kent, and in 15 years of clinical practice, this is the most common conversation I have. Most people over 50 have been told two things about walking: walk more and walk consistently. That advice is not wrong, but it is dangerously incomplete, because walking incorrectly after 50 doesn't just reduce your results. It actively accelerates the exact deterioration you're trying to prevent. It wears down cartilage that cannot regenerate itself. It overloads joints operating with less cushion than they had 20 years ago. It creates chronic tension patterns in muscles that are already losing mass every year. The version of walking that protects your heart, preserves your joints, and extends your independence is not the same version that just happens when you leave the house. What I'm about to walk you through, mistake by mistake, is what I wish every physician would take 15 minutes to explain at a routine appointment. Most don't. That's why I'm here. Before the mistakes, you need to understand what is happening inside your body right now. Because if you don't understand the biological context, the mistakes won't make sense as mistakes. After 50, four physiological shifts begin occurring simultaneously, and they change the rules of physical activity in ways most people never account for. The first shift, skeletal muscle begins disappearing. This process has a clinical name, the sarcopenia. Peer-reviewed data from the Journal of Cachexia, Sarcopenia, and Muscle estimates that after age 50, adults lose between 1 and 2% of their total muscle mass every year. That is not a small number. Over a decade, that's 15 to 20% of your total functional muscle. And muscle is not simply about lifting things or looking strong. Muscle stabilizes every joint in your body. Without it, those joints take a beating. The second shift, your cartilage loses its ability to self-maintain. Cartilage, the smooth tissue cushioning the ends of your bones inside every joint, has no direct blood supply. It feeds itself exclusively through the mechanical compression and release of movement. When a joint moves correctly, synovial fluid is pumped into the cartilage, delivering the nutrients it needs to stay resilient. When movement is absent or mechanically wrong, that delivery system fails. Cartilage starves, it thins, loses elasticity, and begins to degrade. That's osteoarthritis, and while aging makes you more vulnerable to it, bad movement mechanics are what accelerate it. The third shift, metabolic rate drops. Research published in the New England Journal of Medicine confirms that resting metabolic rate declines measurably with age, meaning the same caloric intake that maintained your weight at 40 will produce gradual weight gain at 60 without any other change. The fourth shift, peripheral circulation deteriorates. The small blood vessels serving your legs, feet, and lower extremities lose elasticity with age. Blood moves less efficiently to the muscles that need it most during activity. This is why so many patients over 55 describe the same cluster of symptoms: legs that feel heavy by afternoon, feet that stay cold even indoors, cramping that wakes them up at night. Walking, correct walking, addresses all four of these simultaneously. It signals muscle to maintain itself. It pumps cartilage nutrition through proper joint loading. It accelerates metabolism. It drives circulation into those peripheral vessels. But every one of those benefits depends entirely on technique. Walk with the wrong mechanics and you aren't getting a reduced benefit. You're generating new damage on top of the aging that's already happening. Let's go through the mistakes one by one. Mistake 1, you start walking at full pace. Raymond told me he didn't have time for a warm-up. He was busy, he was efficient, and a walk was a walk. 2 minutes after leaving his front door, he was already at full stride. 6 months into that habit, he had Achilles tendinopathy that kept him off his feet for 3 weeks. The human body is not a machine with an ignition switch. At rest, muscle tissue is cooler, less elastic, and more brittle than it is during activity. Synovial fluid inside your joints is pulled rather than distributed. Your cardiovascular system is operating at baseline. When you demand immediate full effort from that cold-pulled, unprimed system, micro tears occur in muscle fibers. Cartilage surfaces contact each other with less fluid protection than they need. Blood pressure spikes sharply rather than climbing gradually. After 50, your muscles take longer to warm up, your joint fluid takes longer to redistribute, and your blood vessels respond more slowly to sudden demand. The margin for error is smaller. The fix requires no additional time. For the first 3 to 5 minutes of every single walk, move deliberately slowly, slower than feels productive. Not strolling aimlessly, but moving with intention at reduced pace. This gives your muscle fibers time to warm and become elastic. It gives synovial fluid time to spread across the joint surface. It gives your heart time to settle into a working rhythm before you demand more from it. After 5 minutes of that slow start, you have a body that is primed and protected. You can increase pace. You can push harder, but those first 5 minutes are non-negotiable. Mistake 2. Your posture is collapsing forward. Go outside right now and watch the people walking past you. Shoulders rolled forward, head angled down, chin jutting ahead of the chest, eyes on the pavement 3 feet in front of them. This is the default walking posture of most adults in their 50s, 60s, and beyond, and it is creating a chain of damage that most people are attributing entirely to aging. Here is the physics. A human head in neutral position sitting directly over the cervical spine weighs approximately 10 to 12 pounds. Research published in Surgical Technology International found that for every inch the head translates forward from that neutral position, the load placed on the cervical spine and surrounding musculature effectively multiplies. At 2 inches forward, those muscles are managing forces equivalent to 40 to 60 pounds rather than 12. Walk for 30 minutes in that position, and you are subjecting your neck and upper back to the equivalent of carrying a weight that size around your neck continuously. The secondary damage hits your lungs when shoulders are rolled forward and the chest is compressed. The diaphragm, your primary breathing muscle, the dome-shaped muscle that sits below your lungs, cannot fully descend on each breath. Your lungs operate at reduced capacity. You breathe shallowly, pulling in less oxygen than your muscles and brain need during activity. Patients come to me describing fatigue during walks that shouldn't tire them at all. They assume it's cardiac. Frequently, it's mechanical. And the third consequence, the posture collapse, triggers a compensatory cascade through the entire spine. The lower back arches to counterbalance the forward head. The pelvis tilts. The knees begin operating slightly outside their optimal angle. Now, joint loading on the hip and knee is elevated, not because of age, but because of one correctable mechanical error that started at the neck, the correction. Imagine a single thread attached to the crown of your skull, pulling gently straight upward. Your spine decompresses, your head returns to neutral over your shoulders. Your shoulders relax back. Not military, not rigid, just their natural anatomical position. Eyes go to the horizon, not the pavement. Chin level to the ground, chest open. In this position, your diaphragm works without restriction. Your neck carries its actual load, not a multiplied one. Your entire lower extremity kinetic chain operates with correct alignment. This doesn't require strength training or months of physical therapy. It requires awareness and repetition. The first few walks feel slightly effortful to maintain. By the third week, it's automatic. Mistake 3, your footwear is working against you. This is the variable I test for in almost every patient presenting with knee or hip pain, and it's the one they least expect. By the time most people are in their late 50s, 2 things have happened to their feet that they don't know about. First, the plantar fat pads, the natural cushioning tissue on the soles of your feet, have thinned significantly. A 2016 study in Foot and Ankle International confirmed that fat pad thickness decreases measurably with age, reducing the foot's capacity to absorb ground impact. Every step transfers a force of roughly 1 to 1.5 times your body weight through your heel. Without adequate fat pad thickness, that force travels largely unabsorbed up through the ankle, knee, and hip. Second, the intrinsic muscles of the foot weaken with age, reducing arch support from the inside. When the arch collapses, even partially during a walk, the knee rotates inward with each step. This increases medial compartment stress in the joint. The inner portion of the knee takes disproportionate load. Over months, that produces pain. Over years, it accelerates osteoarthritic breakdown in exactly that compartment. Your walking shoes need to do three specific things. They need sufficient midsole cushioning, not so soft that your foot is unstable, but soft enough to absorb impact your fat pads can no longer handle fully. They need medial arch support that mirrors the anatomy of your foot and prevents inward collapse. And the forefoot must flex. The front third of the sole needs to bend naturally as your foot rolls from heel to toe. If the entire sole is rigid, you're overloading your calf and Achilles with every step. One last point, midsole cushioning degrades completely invisibly. Replace your walking shoes every 12 months of regular use, regardless of how the outsole looks. Mistake 4, you're walking once a week for a long time instead of regularly for shorter periods. This is the weekend warrior pattern, and it is physiologically backwards. The body does not respond to volume in a single session. It responds to repetition over time. Every walk sends a signal. Movement is required here. In response, your cardiovascular system becomes more efficient. Your musculature reinforces. Your metabolism remains elevated between sessions. This is called adaptive response, and it only occurs when the signal is repeated consistently. A single 90-minute walk on Sunday followed by 6 days of sedentary behavior is not a strong, repeated signal. It is one loud event in a week of silence. The cardiovascular literature is unambiguous on this. A 2023 analysis in the European Heart Journal confirmed that cardiovascular mortality risk reduction is driven by frequency and consistency, not by peak session volume. For your joints specifically, the infrequent long walk creates a different problem. After several days of minimal movement, your synovial fluid distribution is poor. Your muscles are cold and unadapted, and your tendons are operating below their prepared capacity. A 90-minute demand on that unprepared system creates micro-trauma. The following day is painful. People conclude their joints can't handle walking. The correct conclusion is that their loading pattern is wrong. The target is 20 to 30 minutes of walking on 5 to 6 days of the week. If that feels unreachable from where you are currently, start with 3 days of 15 minutes. Add 1 day every 2 weeks. Add 5 minutes to each session every 3 weeks. The body adapts to what repeats and only to what repeats. Consistency is the mechanism, not duration. Mistake 5. Your arms aren't moving. Arms in pockets, arms held stiff at the sides, arms crossed in front. This is what I see constantly, and it matters more than most people realize. Walking is a cross-pattern bilateral movement. When your left leg steps forward, your right arm is neurologically programmed to swing forward in counterbalance. This isn't coincidence. It's a wired pattern in your nervous system that distributes rotational forces across the spine symmetrically. When arms are static, the lower lumbar spine over-rotates to compensate for the missing counterbalance. For patients who already have lumbar instability or disc issues, this consistently aggravates their pain. For patients without existing back problems, it's planting the seed for them. Beyond the spinal mechanics, arm swing recruits the muscles of the shoulder girdle, upper back, and chest into the walk. That increases total metabolic demand, improves upper body circulation, and builds coordination. The same 30-minute walk performed with correct arm movement delivers meaningfully more benefit after 50. Coordination and balance begin declining gradually. Rhythmic arm swing actively counteracts this. It entrains your nervous system to a consistent bilateral rhythm, stabilizes your stride, and reduces fall risk. The correction is simple. Bend your elbows to approximately 90 degrees. Allow them to swing forward and back in natural opposition to your legs. Not exaggerated, not pumping aggressively, just moving freely in their anatomically natural arc. Shoulders stay relaxed and low, hands unclenched. This should feel fluid, not mechanical. If it feels effortful at first, it's because you've habituated the wrong pattern. Within a week of conscious practice, it normalizes. Mistake 6. You're looking at your phone while you walk. I'll say this directly. This single habit may be the most dangerous thing on this list for anyone over 55. When your eyes are on a screen, whether it's held at chest height or down by your waist, your head tilts downward. We've already established what that does to the cervical spine load, but the injury risk is the more urgent issue. Your vestibular system, the balance and spatial orientation system housed in your inner ear, begins operating with reduced precision after 50. Your proprioceptive system and your body's internal sense of its own position in space also begins to decline. This is a normal, well-documented process. What it means is that your brain increasingly relies on visual input from your environment to maintain stable balance while walking. When your eyes are locked on a screen, that visual input is replaced by a scrolling feed. You stop seeing uneven pavement. You stop seeing the curb you're approaching. You stop seeing the wet patch, the raised edge, the sudden step down. Research from the National Council on Aging estimates that falls are the leading cause of fatal and non-fatal injuries among adults over 65. Hip fractures specifically carry a 12-month mortality rate of approximately 20 to 30% in older adults, a statistic most people have never heard and would not believe if they had. The phone doesn't belong in your hand on a walk. If you use audio, a podcast, music, and audiobook, use earbuds and keep the screen in your pocket. And here is the benefit you're gaining when you put it away. Walking with full environmental attention, sensing the surface beneath your feet, monitoring your own posture and breathing, registering the space around you is active neurological training. That attentional engagement produces measurable cognitive benefit. The phone eliminates it entirely. Mistake 7, you stop when the walk stops. Nobody talks about this one in a clinical setting, and it is costing people enormously. The assumption is that walking is light enough activity that no recovery protocol is necessary. That assumption is wrong after 50. Start with hydration. Skeletal muscle is approximately 75% water by composition. Enzymatic processes governing muscle contraction, repair, and anti-inflammatory response all occur in an aqueous environment. Even mild dehydration, a 1 to 2% reduction in total body water, measurably impairs muscle recovery, increases post-exercise stiffness, and elevates systemic inflammation markers. A 2019 meta-analysis in the journal Nutrients confirmed this relationship specifically in older adults. Drink a full glass of water within 15 minutes of completing your walk. Not a sip, a full glass. During walking, your calf muscles, hamstrings, hip flexors, and quadriceps all work in a shortened contractive pattern without deliberate lengthening afterward. They remain in a state of mild chronic shortening over weeks that accumulates into reduced joint range of motion, persistent stiffness, and the sensation of heaviness in the legs that patients frequently describe to me. 5 minutes of targeted static stretching after every walk, calves, hamstrings, hip flexors, prevents that accumulation entirely. 5 minutes, that's all that separates a recovery protocol from no protocol. And then rest days, the adaptation your body makes to walking, cardiovascular, muscular, skeletal, metabolic, does not occur during the walk. It occurs in the recovery window afterward. 2 rest days per week is not insufficient effort. It is the architecture of sustainable adaptation. Walk, hydrate, stretch, rest. The full cycle delivers durable results. Any broken link in that cycle reduces what you get. Here is what I want you to take from this visit, because this is a visit, not just a video. 7 mistakes, and there is a pattern running through all of them. The version of walking that helps you after 50 requires intention. It is not automatic. It is not what happens when you wander outside in old shoes with your hands in your pocket staring at your phone. The good news is that intention costs nothing. Every correction on this list is free, requires no equipment, and can begin on your next walk. Start slow for the first 5 minutes. Stack your posture before you take your first full stride. Check your shoes. Make walking a daily habit rather than a weekly event. Move your arms. Put the phone away. Drink water when you finish. And stretch for 5 minutes before you sit down. I want to ask you something. What is the single mistake on this list that you know right now, having heard it, describes exactly what you've been doing? Leave it in the comments. Not because it's a quiz, but because naming it makes it real. Patients who can say, I know specifically what I'm doing wrong, change faster and more durably than patients who receive general advice. You've just watched 15 minutes of the most specific walking information most physicians will never have time to give you. The system doesn't profit from you walking correctly. It profits from the knee replacement, the blood pressure medication, the follow-up appointment. This channel exists because that is not an acceptable arrangement. Subscribe if you believe prevention is worth your time. Share this with someone walking the wrong way.